Hello, my name is Fraser Simons. This is my channel, Springboard Thought. Today I'm going to be talking about another shortlisted Giller Prize book, which is a Canadian prize hosted by Scotiabank, which is, I think, the most prestigious, you could say, in Canada, and definitely the most lucrative. The winner gets $100,000, and the runner-ups get $10,000, if I'm remembering correctly. Today I'm going to be talking about What Strange Paradise by Omar El Akkad, and this is a really interesting book about the refugee experience. This is something that comes up quite fairly often in Can Lit, and this has an interesting bent in that right from the beginning we know that it is not a Peter Pan retelling, but it takes elements from Peter Pan and weaves it into the story in an interesting way, because refugees go to America thinking that they're going to get the American dream, and instead they get treated poorly and do jobs that Americans don't want to do, as is the case with all Western culture and probably others as well. So to make the parallel between the sort of Neverland aspect of Peter Pan as the awaiting country that you are fleeing from. In this case, we have Amir, who is going by the name of David sometimes, washes up on the shore of an island. I'm not sure if the island is specifically specified, but it is a resort town and it is policed heavily. Refugees have been washing into the shore often, and it's sort of bothering the tourists and the locals such that it's impacting their business, etc. Meanwhile, people are fleeing for their lives and just trying to make it there alive to seek asylum. The structure of the book is such that we follow Amir when he is traveling to the island, and then in the aftermath of it when he washes ashore and what happens to him. So it's always cutting back and forth. Every chapter is alternating. When Amir washes up onto the shore, he meets a girl named Vana, I think. It's V-A umlauts N-N-A, so I think you would enunciate the A, so it'd be Vana, but I've heard other people pronounce it Vana as well, so I'm not sure. Either way, he meets this girl who's a little bit older, and she sort of guides him through the process of getting asylum, which they are warned away from because nobody knows that Amir / David at this point is like an official refugee. He hasn't been like counted and sorted and entered into the system and stuff. There's another option for them, whereas if they can get to a lighthouse, which has like a ferryman basically that will take them to the mainland, where similar Syrian refugees, specifically from his community, can help him and also not have to deal with the language barrier between the two. They have to pantomime and communicate in some interesting ways, basically, to get across what they're feeling, thinking, and navigating, basically, the problems that they're facing on the island. And then simultaneously, as I said, we get the actual harrowing fairy story where like 100 people are on this rickety ass boat that seems like it's gonna break down. There's different like tiered levels on the ferry as well, where if you haven't paid as much, then you're on the bottom. So if it starts sinking, obviously you're the first to go down. And during this ride, we sort of get the coming of age disillusionment primer, where Amir is getting all of these different stories from all of the people who have made the journey already, the people like the coyotes or whatever they're called, where they're navigating the refugees with the boat and then hopefully making it back and doing multiple trips with this boat. But they're talking about Western society and how it parallels to the East and some Orientalist sort of notions that the West have, and how they treat immigrants, and just a general sort of disillusionment of the Neverland sort of aspect of them going to this place. It's pretty interesting structurally, and I do think that the most satisfying aspects of the story are the subversions of the Peter Pan sort of elements that people know so well, even though by evoking the Peter Pan stuff from the beginning in a quote in the book before it begins, and how it's marketed as well. It's often told as a Peter Pan retelling, and that evokes certain things that aren't present in the book and might hinder it. There is plot beats that you would expect from Peter Pan that aren't in it. However, the main sort of thrust of what happens in Peter Pan is more or less a parallel. If you're expecting an exact retelling though, then you will be disappointed for sure, so don't go in thinking that. The prose itself are very economical, I would say. There is not much description, which is, as you know, sort of my kryptonite, but there's a lot of turns of phrase and specificity regarding the themes of the book that I think really draw it together quite nicely. However, the main sort of story, even though it is constantly alternating, feels a little bit overly simplistic, and the prose, I would say, are inconsistent and swingy at best. It sometimes will be completely innocuous, sometimes it will be annoying, and then sometimes you'll get this like really profound thoughts on certain, usually philosophical points or systemic, societal stuff happening that the characters are sort of ironing out in a debate, or certain thoughts that Amir holds concrete after encountering a certain event or something like that. Those feel really pronounced and interesting, but the overall plot beats that get them to that point aren't very interesting, even when it's alternating with the fairy, which sort of feels like it's artificially increasing the pace because it knows that it's sort of padded out a little bit to me. The Refugee Story is also quintessential. If you've read a lot of canned lit refugee stories, they do usually a little bit more with the kind of story that those are than this does. It's in a sort of weird territory for me where conceptually it's very interesting, especially as I said, with the Neverland prospect of going to a new country. I think that's like brilliant basically, but I struggled to get through it, even though it is a very short book at 233 pages and a lower format of 5 by 8, I think it would be. It's quite a little shorty. Overall, I gave this book 3 stars. I thought that it did what it said it did on the tin pretty well. I didn't feel like it was very innovative. If people are not steeped though in the refugee stories or Canlet scene, I think it could be a very sort of transformative experience maybe if you're experiencing the parallels of that story with something that most kids are anchored in with the Peter Pan aspects of it. I think that could speak to you very well, but for me it was sort of retreading more ground and more innocuous than evocative most of the time, so I found it to be just okay. I've heard that his other book is incredible, American War, I think, and so I'm definitely going to pick that up though, because I feel like his prose, though uneven when they're really firing, are incredible. Anyway, one last book to go, Glorious Frazzled Beings. It hopefully will arrive at the library before the prize is announced in 2 to 3 weeks, something like that. But if not, at least I've read 4 out of the 5. That's not too bad. If you've read What Strange Paradise, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And otherwise, I will see you next video. Bye.